G'day guys, how are we going? Well, the old full drive, it's not being used a great deal at the moment, but there is still quite a few basic full drive maintenance items that you can be checking during these times. Let's have a look at a few. So these basic full drive maintenance tips that I'm going to go through with you, you don't need to be a qualified mechanic to check any of them. All you need is a few tools and you're off and running. And you can just go through and check these things yourself. Now, if you'd end up finding a problem, that sort of thing, well, then you might need a qualified mechanic down the track to fix that problem, but at least you can go and check these things yourself and go through your vehicle and have a good look at it. So, where are we going to start? Right, so where are we going to start? Well, just going to start with just a simple socket, and this one here is to go, check all your radiator hoses, intercooler hoses. If you've got an intercooler on your full drive, make sure that they're all nice and tight. You can come across here and you can just check your radiator and see what that's like. Dip your finger in there. Yep, there's plenty of water in that. The reservoir over there, that's all nice and full. So, you've got your radiator hoses down underneath, get under and check all those and make sure that they're all nice and tight. Even check the hoses, make sure that they're in good condition, ready for when you can get back out in the bush. So, we'll move on to the next one. Righto, the next one you want to be checking is your car batteries. Now, car batteries don't like winter full stop when it's nice and cold, because they can go flat very, very quickly, and even more so when your full drive's not being driven on the road as much as it is at the moment. Now, I've got a multimeter here. Now, you guys mightn't have one of those, but that's all fine if you don't. But this will certainly tell me how much charge is in not only my start battery, which drives my winch and everything as well, but I've got my second battery over there, that I run my accessories off. But this one will tell me. Now, a battery that's been sitting stationary like this one is, that's not the engine running, generally they should be a fully charged battery up around 12.6 volts. So let's see what this one is. So we'll put the black on the negative, red on the positive, and what have we got there? We've got 12.43. So look, that'll still start with full drive, no worries, but yeah, it's getting down a little bit, so that probably needs a bit of a top up. And if you haven't got a battery charger, you plug into the wall, well, what's next best thing? And I reckon we've all got one of these as campers. Let's check this out. Righto, so here's my battery charger. Good old solar panel. Now, I don't have a 240 volt battery charger that I can plug into the wall and charge my batteries. So as campers, we've pretty much all got a solar panel of some sort, when we're out there base camping and you want to keep those batteries charged up. Well, we all take a solar panel away where you can use this as your battery charger while your full drive's in the shed at the moment. Now, even if you do this maybe even once a week, if you haven't got a multimeter like what I've got there to tell me exactly what sort of charge I've got going through my batteries, still just get your solar panel out maybe once a week and just put the panel out in the sunshine and just keep those batteries nice and charged up while your full drive's not being used, because it's this time of year when it's not being used, those batteries will get knocked around in this cold weather. So get the solar panel out and that can be your battery charger. Let's move on to the next one. Righto, so with this tip, we're going to check out the winch and make sure it's working and all power's up, no worries, ready for when we go back out in the bush. Now, I've just got my hand controller here, so we're just going to hit the out button. So I've got no worries, there's plenty of power going through the winch, it's working. But if you go and hit your controller or however you start up your winch and there's no power there, well, then you've got a bigger problem you've got to start dealing with. So you have to work your way through the electrical system and find out why it's not working. So mine's working all right, no worries. Now, the reason why I'm also telling you this tip, and this is probably something you should do throughout the year, if your winch isn't getting used a lot, you want to make sure that it is working. So, and also with the winch housing, in the day they're all made of metal, and when it's cold and like it is at the moment this time of year, well, cold and metal generates its own, own condensation, and they can get condensation inside the winch housing, and condensation and metal don't go well at all, because that's when they can rust. But one thing that my winch does have, it's got a breather on it, so it sort of helps to balance out those inside temperatures, but we can go into that a bit further on down the track. But so what we're going to do here is I'm going to run all this rope out under the mechanics of the controller here. I'm not going to free spool it. We want it to go out under power, and then I'm going to run all the rope back in again. And the reason why we do that, because by running it out under power and back in again, it's generating heat inside the winch, and that's again helping to dry out any potential condensation that's built up inside that winch housing. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to start up the motor. We're going to run it while the motor's running, because you know winches, they do draw a fair bit of power. So and that's the other thing too, you know, while your vehicle's not being used, you can turn your engine over. So but make sure you got some good ventilation going on if you're going to be sitting inside your shed like I am now, if you're going to have your engine running for a little while. So I'll get the engine fired up. We're going to run all this out under the power, run it all the way back in, and just by doing that will certainly help generate some heat in there and dry out any potential condensation buildup, and also it gets the cogs and everything else turned over inside and gets that grease turned over and keeps all that in good working order. So we'll get the engine running, we'll run this out and back in again. There we go, let's generate that. Got it probably all nice and dry in there. Everything's all working, no worries. Now just this last metre or so, now I've turned the engine off for this because it's not going to draw any power, great deal of power for this last little bit. But when you're getting this last metre or so, make sure your hand is well clear of the back of that hook when you get it in there, because while you got the finger pushed on that button and that rope's just reeling its way in, it's not going to stop, and I have no sympathy for your hand if it's in the back there. So make sure you're hanging on the end of that rope, on the end of that hook there, and we'll take this last bit in. There we go. Now it's not going to jam your hand up, and that's how, make sure the winches, if that's working all, no worries, ready for when we get back out in that bush. Let's move on to the next one. Alright, so the next tip we're going to check to see what sort of condition the wheel bearings are in, see if there's any play, any movement going on with any of those. So to do this, we're going to get the tyre just off the ground, just enough so it spins nice and freely. I've got the jack there ready to go, so we'll go around there. We'll get this front diff off the ground, just on this corner here, and we'll check the wheel bearings. Now, just before you do it, just make sure handbrake, in gears, all that sort of stuff on. I know it's not going to go anywhere, but in the day, safety is always a good thing. So we'll get this jack under here and get this tyre off the ground, and then we can check and see what sort of condition they're in, if they need adjusting or not. Now, bit more, there we go. Righto, that's spinning nice and freely there. So the way to check now to see if your wheel bearings need adjusting or not, it's pretty simple. Just grab the top and bottom of the tyre and just try and rock it back and forth. So if you're getting any of this sort of movement rocking back and forth, you'll feel it at the hub sort of area here as to where it's moving. And if you're getting any of that rocking back and forth, that's when you need to get your wheel bearings adjusted up. Now, if you haven't got the tools or the know-how how to go about doing that, well, just take a note of it, and then when you can, zip it down to your mechanic and get him to adjust your wheel bearings up. So that's how you go about checking your wheel bearings. And then for the same, the other side, just get the wheel off the ground again, same as that. Try and rock it back and forth, top and bottom there, and see how you go. And if, as long as you've got no movement, well, your wheel bearings are pretty good. So let's move on to the next tip. Right, so the next one we're going to check is we're going to get out the good old grease gun. Now, everyone should have a grease gun and go through all your moving parts and grease nipples and that sort of stuff, and particularly in the front end of your full drive with all your steering components, all that sort of stuff needs greasing up, and then all the way through underneath your vehicle, all the drive line, drive shafts and those sort of things, end of those where the uni joints are, they all got grease nipples in them, and you should go through and check all those out. So get the old grease gun out, but one thing you're going to need, because most grease guns, they come with just a sort of a solid bar at the top there for where your grease comes out. You're going to need a flexible hose, because particularly this one I'm about to do right here, if I didn't have the flexible hose on, I just can't get into it. So make sure you get yourself a flexible hose. It's going to make life a lot easier when you're climbing around in those tight spots. And also make sure you've got yourself a rag, because the tops of those grease nipples, they're all dirty and grimy from, you know, being out in the bush and covered in mud. And you've got to make sure you clean those off before you put your the grease gun on top of it to fill it up, because if you don't, all that grime and junk that's on top of the grease nipple there ends up getting pushed inside that nice fresh grease. So make sure you get your rag out and give that a good clean. So we'll jump in here. Right, so here's that steering grease nipple I'm talking about. So just get your rag, give that a good clean on the top, and make sure that's nice and clean. There we go, nice and cleaned up there. And then just put that on top there like so. It clicks on. It's not going to come off, and then just pump some grease into it. You can hear it squeezing out in there. Look at it. There we go, that's all that one needs. Take that off. Let's give that a clean up so it doesn't get covered in gunk again. And we'll shoot off and we'll do the one on the other side as well. Where is he there? Give him a clean off. There we go. Clicks on there like that. There we go. That'll be enough on that. Clean that top off. That's pretty much all there is in the front here, I think. And that's the thing, you know, the more you do this, you know, you'll find out where all your grease nipples are. I'm sure you got, you know, your owner's manual might tell you as well. But, you know, go all through all this, check them all out, grease them all up, and get all those ready to go. So, we'll move on to the next one. Righto, so this tip down the back here, it's to do with my fridge. Now, what I do with my fridge, particularly when, you know, my patrol's not being used a lot as it is at the moment, well, instead of leaving it plugged in to run off my secondary battery that's under my bonnet there, I plug it into 240, so it's sitting plugged in over there, and this fridge never turns off. I run it 24/7 all the time. So rather than draining that battery there, just get the plug out, plug it into 240, fridge keeps going. And you know, if you haven't got, you know, a plug here, you know, a 240 plug from your fridge, you've got to still keep running off your second battery, well, maybe try and do a trickle charge somehow to that second battery to keep it charged up if you keep your fridge running, you know, like I do. So that's how I get around that. Fridge keeps running, stays nice and cold for when I want to go out in the bush, it's all set to go. 240's the way to go. I suppose with one last tip over and above, you know, everything that I've certainly shown you is try and take your full drive for a lap around the block. You know, get out of the garage, go for a drive in it, you know, turn the wheels over, all the bearings and engine and all that sort of stuff. So if you can do that maybe once a week or once a fortnight, just take it for a lap around the block just to keep those things ticking over. So what other items would you put in the list? You know, you guys must have a heap of other things of maintenance items that you do on your full drive while it's been stuck in the garage at the moment. Put them in the comments down below, and that way everyone can learn off the ones that I've just done and the ones that extra ones that you guys have got. So until then, I look forward to seeing you guys out in the bush someday.